On the agenda tonight, we're going back to 2010. We're going to be taking a look at Gene McDaniels, and he's going to be performing 100 Pounds of Clay. Hello, Phil here from Wings of Pegasus, and welcome to another analysis video. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. So there is a little bit of writing on the screen before we start the video, which is just giving everybody a bit of background information behind the performance. So I'll leave that on there so you guys can read along, but we'll jump into the performance and see how Gene gets on. By the way, he's joined by Kent Allen on acoustic guitar here as well, but let's get into it.
Are you all set or not? Come on, come on. He took 100 pounds of clay, and then he said, hey listen, I'm gonna fix this world today, because I know it's missing. Then he rolled his big sleeves up, and a brand new world began. He created a woman and lots of loving for a man. Yes, he did. Oh, yes, he did. Yes, he did. With just 100 pounds of clay, he made my life worth living. And I will thank him every day for every kiss you're giving. And I'll thank him every night for these arms that are holding me tight. And he did it all with just 100 pounds of clay. Now can't you just see him walking around and round, picking clay up off the ground, doing just what he should do to make a living dream like you. He rolled his big sleeves up, and a brand new world began. He created a woman and lots of loving for a man. Whoa, yes he did, with just 100 pounds of clay. People, let me tell you what he did with just 100 pounds of clay.
And there we have it. So to put this performance in perspective, the original was released in 1961, and this is a performance in 2010. And sadly, Gene would pass away the year after this, 2011. So it was one of his last performances. And this was his first huge hit in 1961. Just to give a quick bit of background behind the recording process of this song, and the fact that Gene, in an interview that I've read on the internet, said that he didn't put a lot of effort into the recording of this song because at the time he was with Liberty Records and they were having a bit of a shuffle around. People were losing their jobs and they needed another producer. So Snuff Garrett, who worked in the mailroom of the record label, got a huge promotion to now be the producer in the studio for the record label. And Gene thought that it was a little bit weird to have somebody who worked in the mailroom now as the main producer, and Snuff then started to tell Gene how to record this song and how to sing it. And this put Gene's back up a little bit, being told how to sing and how to record a song by the guy from the mailroom. So he didn't put a lot of effort into the recording, but the relaxed nature of his vocal then turned into a monster hit. And like I said, it was his first huge hit, got to number 3 in the charts, and Snuff Garrett would turn into a huge producer of the 1960s. He had multiple hits that came out of his studio, so it just turned out that he was working in the mailroom, but he had a huge talent as a producer. And this is another thing that Gene then said later on in life, that he wanted Snuff to know that he didn't hold those original views that he had when he first worked with Snuff about him later on in his career, because then he saw how successful Snuff was as a producer. Gene had a lot of success as a singer in the early 60s, but he was also a singer-songwriter, and he wrote Feel Like Making Love, which was a huge hit for Roberta Flack, and that got to number 1, and Compared to What was another of Gene's songs, and that's been covered since by hundreds of artists, and Roberta released a version of that in 1969, but that same year at the Montreux Jazz Festival, there's a performance by Eddie Harris and Les McCann that became more well-known than Roberta's version. But having that songwriting ability, I always say, is a totally different skill to just singing or playing an instrument, but Gene certainly had that ability. The other thing about this song is the fact that when it was released in 1961, here in the UK, the BBC refused to play it on the radio because they thought that the lyrical content was too sexual, because it was referring to a woman being, or at least they interpreted the lyrics as a woman being made just for a man and for the enjoyment of men, and that was it, and they were there for no other reason. So the lyrics were actually rewritten to have a version for the UK that were a little bit more acceptable, so therefore they didn't miss out on that radio airplay for too long. They managed to work their way around it, but it certainly gives you an idea of the times and how the times have changed. That a song like this can be banned from radio airplay for being too sexual, and then just watch some of the music videos you get nowadays, and pretty much anything goes, it seems like. Something that I want to put a spotlight on are the chords that are being used here on the guitar, but also on the original record. You have that jazz feel to it because of the chord progression that we get, especially in the bridge, where we've got a little bit of diminished action going on and augmented chords. So it gives it a totally different sound when we get to that point. But also here, just a quick word about the guitar, the rhythm going on here, because like I mentioned, we have Kent on acoustic guitar just supporting Gene here. Just a technical point that in this performance we're a tone lower than the original record, so it is a standalone performance and you'll have to transpose those chords down by a tone, but I'll call them out anyway because I'm going to play the chords and save you the trouble of transposing it yourself. The important thing about the rhythm is on the right hand, getting these percussive strikes in there on beat 2 and 4 of the bar, which is, if you were playing the drums, where your snare would be. So you have this. That kind of sound. So hopefully you can hear that sound coming in because it just drives it along. So I'll give you the chords, and to begin with we'll just go through them. On the B flat, G minor, E flat, F. Kind of like that. And put those together. And that's going to be your verse. And something that Kent does throw in there is this little rundown, which when we go through, I'll play it. Kind of like that, the little rundown that we had there. And that's just your root note and then your fifth that we're playing together. So if we're... You only want to hit those strings like I did there. And then I actually started playing my B flat down here rather than here. But it doesn't really matter. You can then resume once you've played there. get back to your B flat in that position if you want to afterwards. When we do get to the chorus, it's just going to be a loop of our E flat and our F. So it means that we're playing through the verse, the and here, just repeating. And then we'll be back into the verse there. I'm just going to jump into the video here to show you guys the bridge, or the middle eight, as it's also called, and the fact that we get really jazzy here with some chord shapes, like I said, diminished and augmented action, but let's listen out for it.
100 pounds to play. Now can't you just see?
So there was our first augmented chord right before we're about to get into the bridge. So we had this. And now here. So that's our augmented F there. And now we're going down to, I think we were just going to be in another B flat.
Walking around.
Okay, so now this is now where we've got our diminished. It's a little walk up from that B flat, then diminished there, and that's going to be our B diminished chord. Sounds like C minor seventh there. And that's where we've got our F, and that's going to be augmented there. Kind of like that. I'm not actually sure if Kent is playing that root note on the F. He might just be playing those top four strings in terms of going from the D, the G, the B, and the E. Kind of like that. And then he'd reset to that B again. I think it's going to be the same, just 2 times through exactly.
Doing just what he should do to make a living dream like you.
Oh no, ending with a straight F rather than the augmented. And here, sounds like we might have a major seventh in there. Rather than, and this is the E flat that we have in the verse and the chorus previously, instead of just playing that straight E flat, it's that E flat major seventh. And you just want to make sure that you go to that shape instead.
Up and a brand new world began. He created.
And then we're back into our standard progression for the chorus, which would be our B flat, like that. So we've got a relatively simple chord progression here, but it's the choice of chords that we go to. It really does start getting that jazzy feel when you start throwing in diminished chords like that. Minor seventh as well, but the killer is going to be that augmented, which is going to totally change the feel. And the fact that we had that little introduction of exactly the same thing, the augmented F, but now, because we played our chords up here, and it was this. It makes more sense to play our augmented here, rather than jumping all the way down and then having to rush into that shape. So that's why we just play it in a different position the first time round. But a really cool performance here, considering the fact that it was almost 50 years since the song was released, and just performing in an arts school as this is, it was arts in reach is what it said in the intro. So you've got these students that just get to listen to Gene perform. I'm not sure whether they would have been up to speed who Gene was, but I'm sure they must have had some background as to his recording history and songwriting. I know that there are maybe 2 or 3 that aren't necessarily getting into it that much, clapping along, but certainly if I was in this class, well, I'd be asking him questions probably for about a year just about the whole recording process in the 60s, songwriting in general, and just the whole art form that he was so good at. Like I said, it's a totally different skill being able to write hits, and he was a great example of someone who could do that, but also having that silky smooth vocal and just engaging everyone when he performed, when he sang. And certainly go back to listen to that original if you do get a chance, because you'll get a real appreciation of the way that he sings in that relaxed nature, but also with that in mind, knowing that when he was recording this in the studio, he really wasn't putting in a lot of effort, but I think it suits the song because he is more relaxed about it. So it's weird how things happen. Everything happens for a reason, and his vocal delivery on that day just meant that it was exactly what the song needed. So I think in the long term, he can thank Snuff for working in the mailroom and then getting promoted to being the producer in the studio. But anyway, thank you guys so much for suggesting this video for me to take a look at, and keep those suggestions coming in the comments below. Let me know what you guys think, and if you did enjoy this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe, and I'll see you guys at the next one. Rock!